The great hall of the Council of Worlds had not seen such desperation in 10,000 years. Ancient beings from across the galaxy sat in their floating chairs, their faces showing the weight of countless defeats. The air itself seemed heavy, with fear. High Counselor Valdris stood at the center of the massive chamber, his blue skin pale with exhaustion. Around him, the greatest minds of 100 different species stared at holographic displays showing the same terrible truth. They were losing the war. "The Void Swarm has taken the Kepler systems," announced General Thorne, his voice barely above a whisper. "That makes 47 star systems completely consumed in the past month alone." A collective shudder ran through the council chamber. The Void Swarm was unlike any enemy they had ever faced. These creatures existed partially outside normal space and time, making them nearly impossible to fight with conventional weapons. They consumed everything, planets, stars, even the fabric of space itself, leaving behind only empty darkness. "Our finest warships cannot even scratch them," said Admiral Kesh, her tentacles writhing with frustration. "Energy weapons pass right through them. Our plasma cannons, ion beams, even antimatter torpedoes, nothing works." Valdris looked around the chamber at the assembled leaders, the Altair Republic, masters of energy manipulation, the Vegan Empire, whose technology could reshape matter at the molecular level, the Centauri Federation, who had perfected artificial intelligence beyond anything imaginable. All of them helpless against an enemy that seemed to exist beyond the laws of physics. "There is one option left," Valdris said slowly. "The Forbidden Archives speak of it." The chamber fell silent. The Forbidden Archives contained knowledge that was deemed too dangerous to use, sealed away by the Council's ancestors millions of years ago. "You cannot be serious," said Counselor Dex, his reptilian features twisted with concern. "The summoning ritual has been banned for good reason. It could tear apart the fabric of reality itself." "Reality is already being torn apart," Valdris replied. "The Void Swarm will reach our core worlds within days. We have no other choice." The debate that followed was fierce, but brief. In the end, desperation won over caution. The vote was close, but it passed. Within hours, the ancient ritual chamber deep beneath the council building was activated for the first time in eons. Strange symbols carved into walls of crystallized time began to glow with an eerie light. The air itself seemed to ripple as space and time bent around the chamber. "The texts are clear," said Elder Vex, the council's most ancient member, as he read from a tome that seemed to be made of solidified starlight. "We must summon the most dangerous ship from the warrior world of Terra. The legends speak of being so violent, so unpredictable, that they wage war even upon themselves." "Humans," whispered General Thorne. "The species that achieved spaceflight while still fighting wars on their home planet." The ritual began with 12 council members joining their mental energy together. The air in the chamber started to crackle, with power as they reached across the galaxy, searching for the ship that would answer their call. Light exploded from the center of the chamber as reality folded in on itself. The sound was like the universe screaming. Then in a flash of blinding white light, something appeared. The council members stared in horror. Before them sat a small, battered ship that looked like it had been through a dozen wars. Its hull was scorched and dented, painted in dull gray, metal that seemed primitive compared to the gleaming, energy-forged vessels of the council races. Strange symbols were painted on its side, letters that spelled UES Defiance, in a language none of them recognized. This cannot be right," stammered Admiral Kesh. "This tiny vessel is supposed to be their most dangerous ship?" The ship was barely 200 meters long, smaller than most Council shuttlecraft. Its design was crude, using what appeared to be chemical rockets and metal armor instead of the energy shields and plasma drives that civilized species used. Before anyone could react, a section of the ship's hull opened with a mechanical grinding sound. A ramp extended and figures began to emerge. The first was clearly the leader, a woman with short brown hair and wearing a dark blue uniform. Her eyes were sharp and alert as she took in the massive alien chamber around her. Behind her came more humans, all wearing similar uniforms and carrying weapons that looked frighteningly primitive. Captain Riley of the United Earth ship Defiance, the woman announced, her voice carrying clearly across the chamber. I don't suppose one of you can explain why we were just yanked out of patrol near Jupiter and dumped in what looks like an alien council chamber. Valdris stepped forward, trying to maintain his dignity despite the embarrassment of the situation. I am High Counselor Valdris of the Council of Worlds. You have been summoned to help us in our darkest hour. Captain Riley looked around at the assembled aliens, then back at her ship. Summoned? You mean you actually pulled us through space somehow? Through space and time, yes, Valdris admitted. The ritual reached across the galaxy to bring us the most dangerous vessel from your world. A laugh escaped from one of the human crew members, a tall man with lieutenant's stripes. Most dangerous? Sir, the Defiance is a standard patrol destroyer. We've got maybe 200 crew members and enough firepower to handle pirates and smugglers. There must be some mistake, said Counselor Dex. This cannot be Earth's most powerful warship. Captain Riley's expression hardened. It's not. We've got carriers that could flatten continents and dreadnoughts that could crack moons. But the Defiance has something those big ships don't. What? Asked Valdris. We're expendable, Riley said simply. We're the ship they send when someone needs to do something crazy and probably suicidal. We're the ones who volunteer for the missions nobody else wants. The council members exchanged glances. This was not what they had expected. Perhaps, said Elder Vex slowly, that is exactly what we need. Over the next hour, the aliens explained their situation. They showed the humans holographic displays of the Void Swarm's attacks, star maps showing the progression of destruction, and tactical analyses of their failed attempts to fight back. Captain Riley studied the data with growing interest. These things exist partially outside normal space-time? Correct, said General Thorne. Our weapons cannot affect them because they phase through normal matter. But they can affect our reality, added Admiral Kesh. They tear through our ships like tissue paper. Lieutenant Brooks, the Defiance's tactical officer, frowned at the displays. What about kinetic weapons? Good old-fashioned explosives? Primitive. Chemical reactions, scoffed Counselor Dex. We abandoned such crude methods millions of years ago. Sometimes crude works when fancy doesn't, muttered Commander Hayes, Riley's first officer. The humans continued studying the alien data, asking questions that seemed strange to the council members. What was the void creature's reaction time? How did they coordinate their attacks? What happened to the energy from weapons that passed through them? Captain, said Dr. Martinez, the ship's engineer, I'm reading some interesting energy signatures from these attacks. It's like the creatures exist in a quantum superposition. They're here and not here at the same time. Quantum superposition? Valdris had never heard the term. It's a principle of physics, Riley explained. Something can exist in multiple states simultaneously until it's observed or measured. If these void creatures are using quantum mechanics to phase through attacks, then maybe we need to collapse their quantum state, finished Brooks. The aliens looked confused, but Captain Riley was nodding slowly. We need to see one of these attacks in person. When's the next one expected? The Void Swarm is moving toward the Valdoran system, said General Thorne. They will arrive within days. It will likely be the final battle. If we lose there, the path to our core worlds will be open. Riley looked at her crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that had carried them through a dozen impossible missions. Then that's where we'll make our stand. With respect, Captain, said Admiral Kesh. Your ship is barely a tenth the size of our smallest warship. How can you hope to succeed where our entire fleet has failed? Captain Riley smiled grimly. Because sometimes, Admiral, the most dangerous thing isn't the biggest gun or the strongest armor. Sometimes it's the willingness to do what nobody else is crazy enough to try. As the council members began preparations for what might be their last battle, none of them noticed the small smile on Elder Vex's ancient face. Perhaps the ritual had worked exactly as intended after all. The next morning, Captain Riley stood in the council's war room, staring at a holographic display that showed the galaxy's slow death. Red zones marked where the Void Swarm had already struck, leaving behind empty space where star systems once existed. The pattern was clear and terrifying. "They're not random attacks," Riley observed, tracing the path of destruction with her finger. "There's a strategy here." High Counselor Valdris nodded grimly. "We believe they target systems with the highest life energy first. Populated worlds, busy trade routes, centers of civilization." Lieutenant Brooks stood beside his captain, studying the tactical data. "How long have they been attacking?" 3 years, replied General Thorne. "It started in the Outer Rim territories. We thought it was just another hostile species at first." "What changed your mind?" asked Commander Hayes. Admiral Kesh activated another display, showing a recorded battle. The humans watched in fascination as elegant alien warships engaged shadowy creatures that seemed to flow like liquid darkness through space. "Watch carefully," Kesh said. "See how our plasma beams pass directly through them? Our ion cannons have no effect. Even our most powerful antimatter weapons do nothing." The humans observed as the alien fleet fired volley after volley of energy weapons. Brilliant beams of light struck the void creatures and simply passed through them as if they weren't there. But when the creatures struck back, their attacks tore through the alien ship's energy shields like they were made of paper. "Fascinating," muttered Dr. Martinez, the ship's engineer. "It's like they exist in a different phase of reality." "Our scientists believe they come from what you might call a shadow dimension," explained Valdris. "They can interact with our universe when they choose to, but our weapons cannot touch them." Captain Riley paused the recording at a moment when one of the void creatures was attacking an alien cruiser. "There," she said, pointing at the screen. "Did you see that?" "See what?" asked Counselor Dex. "The creature became more solid when it attacked. For just a moment, it had to exist fully in our reality to affect your ship." Brooks nodded. "The captain's right. Look at the energy readings during the attack phase." Elder Vex leaned forward with interest. "You see something we missed?" "Maybe," Riley said. "Your weapons are all energy-based, right? Plasma, ions, antimatter." "Of course," said General Thorne. "What else would we use?" "Matter," Hayes said simply. "Good old-fashioned matter moving. Very fast." The aliens looked confused. Admiral Kesh shook her head. "Kinetic weapons are primitive. We abandoned such crude methods millions of years ago." "Crude maybe, but effective," Riley replied. "Show us more recordings. I want to see every battle you have on file." For the next several hours, the humans studied battle after battle. Each one showed the same pattern. Alien energy weapons passing harmlessly through the void creatures while the alien ships were destroyed. "You fight like civilized beings," observed Dr. Kim, the ship's historian. "Your warfare follows rules, protocols. It's clean and precise." "Of course," said Valdris, sounding offended. "We are not barbarians." "No, but maybe that's the problem," Riley said. "These void creatures don't follow your rules. They exist outside your understanding of how warfare should work." Lieutenant Brooks pulled up the ship's tactical database on his portable device. "Captain, look at this. The energy signatures from our nuclear warheads." Riley studied the data. Nuclear weapons created chaos, random radiation, heat, electromagnetic pulses, and quantum fluctuations. Unlike the precise energy beams the aliens used, atomic explosions were messy and unpredictable. "Quantum chaos," Martinez said, understanding immediately. "If these creatures exist in quantum superposition, chaotic quantum events might collapse their wave function." The aliens stared blankly at the humans. "Think of it this way," Riley explained. "Your weapons are like trying to hit fog with a laser pointer. The beam passes right through. But what if instead of a precise beam, you used something that affects everything in an area? Like a storm instead of a sword," added Hayes. Elder Vex's ancient eyes lit up with understanding. "You believe your primitive weapons might succeed where our advanced technology fails?" "It's possible," Riley said. "But we need to test the theory." "The Void Swarm will reach the Valderan system in 2 days," General Thorne announced. "That will be our only chance." "Then we need to prepare," Riley decided. "Can your technology upgrade our ship without removing our weapons?" "We can add energy shields and faster engines," Admiral Kesh said. But why keep those crude chemical explosives? Because those crude explosives might be exactly what we need, Brooks replied. Turman. Next day was a blur of activity. Alien engineers swarmed over the Defiance, installing energy shield generators and upgrading the ship's engines with faster-than-light capability. The humans watched nervously as their familiar ship was transformed. Will our weapons still work with all these modifications? Hayes asked Martinez. The aliens are being careful not to interfere with our systems, the engineer replied. They think we're crazy for wanting to keep them. Meanwhile, Captain Riley met with her crew in the ship's briefing room. 200 faces looked back at him. Her, all showing the same mixture of fear and determination. I won't lie to you, Riley began. This is probably a suicide mission. We're going up against an enemy that has destroyed entire fleets of ships more advanced than ours. But we have something they don't expect, Lieutenant Brooks added. We have weapons they've never seen before. Chief Petty Officer Johnson, the ship's weapons specialist, raised his hand. How do we know our nukes will work any better than their fancy energy weapons? We don't, Riley admitted. But here's what we do know. We're human. For our entire history, we've found ways to fight. Enemies stronger than us, we adapt, we improvise, we find weaknesses where others see only strength. Dr. Kim stood up. Throughout human history, the underdog has often won not through superior technology, but through superior tactics and willingness to take risks. The aliens fight by rules that have worked for millions of years, Hayes continued. But these void creatures don't follow those rules. Maybe it's time to break some rules ourselves. What's the plan, Captain? Asked Sergeant Lopez from the Marine contingent. Riley looked around at her crew. We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to improvise, adapt, and overcome. And if that means ramming a nuclear warhead down a shadow monster's throat, then that's exactly what we'll do. A cheer went up from the crew. It wasn't loud or confident, but it was determined. These were people who had volunteered for the dangerous missions, who had chosen to serve on a ship that went where others feared to go. That evening, as the upgraded Defiance prepared to depart for the Valderan system, High Counselor Valdris visited Captain Riley on the bridge. I must ask, he said quietly, are your people always so willing to face certain death? Riley looked out at the stars through the bridge's main viewer. Not always. But when something threatens everything we care about, yes, we have a saying. Death before dishonor. Sometimes the only way to win is to be willing to lose everything. Your species is very strange, Valdris observed. Maybe, Riley replied. But strange has kept us alive so far. As the Defiance jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading toward what might be the galaxy's last battle, none of the aliens noticed the small modifications the humans had made to their nuclear weapons. Chief Johnson had worked through the night, turning each warhead into something that had never existed before. If the theory was right, if quantum chaos could collapse the void creature's superposition, then the galaxy might have a chance. If not, then at least they would go down fighting in the most human way possible, with stubborn determination and weapons that no sane species would dare to use. The war for the galaxy's survival was about to begin, and for the first time in 3 years the outcome was uncertain. The journey to the Valdoran system took 18 hours at faster-than-light speed. During that time, the Defiance became a ship unlike any other in the galaxy. Alien technology merged with human engineering in ways that should have been impossible. Captain Riley walked through the corridors of her transformed vessel, marveling at the changes. Energy conduits now ran alongside the old electrical cables. Quantum processors worked next to simple computer terminals. The ship hummed with a strange harmony of advanced and primitive technology. Status report, she called as she entered the engineering section. Dr. Martinez looked up from a console that displayed readings in 3 different alien languages. The new shield generators are online, Captain. The aliens weren't kidding about their technology. These shields could probably stop a small moon. What about our weapons? Riley asked. Chief Petty Officer Johnson grinned as he patted one of the ship's missile tubes. All nuclear warheads are armed and ready. I've made some modifications based on the quantum theory. What kind of modifications? Each warhead now has a quantum flux generator attached to it, Johnson explained. If we're right about these void creatures existing in superposition, the flux should force them into a single quantum state right before the nuke detonates. Lieutenant Brooks joined them carrying a data pad. The aliens are still confused about our tactics. Admiral Kesh asked me 3 times why we're not replacing our primitive missiles with their antimatter torpedoes. Because antimatter is still just energy, Riley replied. Organized, predictable energy. Our nukes create chaos, heat, radiation, electromagnetic pulses, and now quantum fluctuations. If these shadow creatures can phase through organized attacks, maybe chaos is what we need. Meanwhile, in the ship's briefing room, Commander Hayes was addressing the senior staff. The holographic display showed the Valdoran system, a bright star surrounded by 7 planets, including the heavily populated world of Valdora Prime. Intelligence reports suggest the Void Swarm will arrive in 6 hours, Hayes announced. The alien fleet is already in position. Over 300 ships from 12 different species. 300 ships that can't hurt the enemy, muttered Sergeant Lopez. What makes them think we can do better? Dr. Kim, the ship's historian, cleared her throat. If I may offer some perspective, throughout human history, our greatest victories have come when we refused to fight by the enemy's rules. When the British used organized battle lines, American colonists used guerrilla warfare. When navies relied on battleships, submarines struck from below. This is different, argued Lieutenant Morrison from the navigation department. We're talking about creatures that exist partially outside reality itself, which is exactly why conventional thinking won't work, Dr. Kim replied. The aliens have tried to fight these creatures like they would fight any normal enemy. But the Void Swarm isn't normal. Hayes nodded. The captain believes our best chance is to be unpredictable. Do things no rational military force would attempt. Like, what? Asked Chief Engineer Patel. Like using nuclear weapons in ways they were never designed for, Hayes said. Like ramming attacks. Like treating our ship as expendable if it means stopping the enemy. Uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Everyone knew the odds of survival were minimal, but hearing it stated so plainly made it real. Sir, said Lieutenant Morrison quietly, what if we're wrong? What if our weapons don't work either? Hayes looked around at the assembled officers. Then we'll try something else, and if that doesn't work, we'll improvise. That's what humans do. We adapt. 3 hours before the estimated arrival of the Void Swarm, Captain Riley received an unexpected visitor. High Counselor Valdris transported aboard the Defiance, accompanied by Elder Vex and Admiral Kesh. Counselor, Riley said, surprised. I thought you were coordinating the defense from the command station. I wanted to see your preparations firsthand, Valdris replied, and to ask you one final time. Are you certain about this course of action? Riley led the aliens to the bridge where her crew was making final preparations. The view screen showed the alien fleet in formation. Sleek, beautiful ships that looked like works of art floating in space. Look at your fleet, Riley said. Every ship is perfectly positioned, following tactical doctrines refined over millions of years. It's impressive. But, prompted Elder Vex, but it's also predictable. The Void creatures have fought your kind for 3 years. They know how you think, how you fight. They've adapted to your strategies. Admiral Kesh looked offended. Our tactics are based on mathematical precision and strategic theory. They represent the ultimate evolution of warfare. For fighting other civilized species, maybe, Commander Hayes interjected. But these creatures aren't civilized. They're more like a force of nature. How do you fight a hurricane? Asked Lieutenant Brooks. You don't try to out-organize it or outthink it. You either get out of its way or you hit it with something it can't predict. Valdris studied the human crew with growing curiosity. Your people seem remarkably calm for beings facing almost certain death. We're scared, Riley admitted. But fear is just another factor to consider. We've learned to function despite it. Your species is truly strange, murmured Elder Vex. In all my centuries of life, I have never seen beings so willing to embrace chaos. Chief Johnson chose that moment to run a final test of the weapons systems. The ship vibrated slightly as the missile tubes cycled through their arming sequence. "What was that?" asked Admiral Kesh nervously. "Just checking our nuclear arsenal," Johnson replied cheerfully. 48 warheads, each one capable of turning a small city into radioactive glass. The aliens looked horrified. "You carry weapons of such destruction?" Valdris gasped. "These are actually our smaller nukes," Hayes explained. "We save the planet crackers for special occasions." "How can you be so casual about such terrible weapons?" Elder Vex asked. Riley considered the question seriously. "Because sometimes terrible weapons are necessary. The Void Swarm has already consumed 47 star systems. How many billions of lives is that? If our terrible weapons can stop them, then we'll use them." 2 hours before the attack, the crew of the Defiance gathered in the ship's main hangar bay. It was one of the few areas large enough to hold all 200 crew members at once. Captain Riley stood before them, looking at faces she had known for years. These were her people, not the finest soldiers in the fleet, not the most decorated officers, but men and women who volunteered for the missions nobody else wanted. "In a few hours, we're going to face an enemy that has never been defeated," she began. "The odds are against us. The smart money says we won't survive. But here's what the smart money doesn't understand," she continued. "We're not trying to be heroes. We're not trying to prove anything, we're just trying to do our job. Our job is to protect Earth and her colonies," called out Chief Martinez, "even if Earth is 50,000 light-years away. Our job is to stand between the darkness and the light," added Sergeant Lopez, "even when the darkness seems overwhelming." Riley nodded. "The aliens summoned us because they thought we were their most dangerous ship. They were wrong about that. We're not the most dangerous because of our weapons or our technology. We're the most dangerous because we're willing to do what needs to be done," finished Lieutenant Brooks. A voice from the back of the crowd called out, "What if our plan doesn't work, Captain?" Riley smiled grimly. "Then we'll try something else. And if that doesn't work, we'll improvise. We'll keep fighting until there's nothing left to fight with." "And then?" asked another voice. "Then we'll fight with our bare hands if we have to," Riley replied, "because that's what humans do. We don't give up. We don't surrender. We adapt. We overcome. And we survive." As the crew dispersed to their battle stations, Elder Vex approached Captain Riley privately. "I have lived for over 2,000 years, the ancient alien said. "I have seen the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth and death of stars, but I have never seen anything like your species." "We're survivors," Riley said simply. "It's what we do best. The ritual that summoned you was supposed to bring us the most dangerous ship from your world," Elder Vex continued. "I begin to think it worked exactly as intended." 1 hour before the Void Swarm's arrival, all ships in the system received the same message. "Unknown entities detected at the edge of the system. All vessels prepare for combat." The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin, and a small human destroyer was about to prove that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't the one that destroys the most, but the one wielded by those who refuse to give up. The Void Swarm emerged from hyperspace like a nightmare-given form. What had once been empty space suddenly filled with writhing shadows that seemed to absorb light itself. The creatures moved in patterns that hurt to look at, flowing through space in ways that defied physics. "Contact," announced Lieutenant Brooks from the tactical station. "Sensors detect over 2,000 individual entities. Mass readings are inconsistent." Captain Riley studied the main view screen, watching as the alien fleet moved into attack formation. 300 ships spread across space in perfect geometric patterns, their hulls gleaming with energy shields and weapon systems. "Beautiful," she murmured. "Captain?" asked Commander Hayes. "Look at them. Even facing annihilation, they maintain perfect formation. It's like watching a ballet." The alien fleet opened fire first. Hundreds of energy weapons lit up the darkness. Plasma beams, ion cannons, antimatter torpedoes. The space between the fleets became a light show of devastating power, and every shot passed harmlessly through the void creatures. Just like before, Hayes observed grimly. The void swarm responded by flowing forward like a tide of darkness. When they reached the alien formation, the slaughter began. Captain Riley watched in horrified fascination as the shadow creatures tore through the alien ships. Energy shields that could stop planet-killing weapons collapsed instantly. Hulls made of materials stronger than diamond cracked like eggshells. "They're not just attacking," Brooks reported. "They're feeding energy. Readings from the destroyed ships show they're absorbing the power from the alien reactors. The life force, too," added Dr. Martinez. "Biosigns from the crews are being drained away. Within minutes, 50 alien ships were destroyed. The remainder tried to fall back into a defensive position, but the void creatures pursued them relentlessly." "Admiral, Kesh is calling for a general retreat," reported the communications officer. "Belay that," Riley ordered. "All stop. Prepare for combat." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of alien technology mixed with human engineering. The Defiance hung motionless in space while around them, the greatest fleet in galactic history was being systematically destroyed. "Captain," Hayes said, quietly, "perhaps we should—" "No." Riley's voice was firm. "We came here to fight. That's what we're going to do." She activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. You've seen what we're up against. The enemy is unlike anything we've ever faced. But remember, we're human. We've been fighting impossible odds since we learned to make fire." She paused, watching as another alien cruiser exploded in the distance. "We're going to do this the human way. Fast, dirty, and with complete disregard for our own safety. Johnson, I want nuclear mines deployed in a spread pattern. Brooks, plot an intercept course for the largest group of contacts." "Aye, Captain," came the responses. The Defiance began to move, accelerating toward the battle at a pace that would have been impossible with their old engines. The alien upgrades had given them speed, but they were still using human tactics. "First spread away," Johnson reported. 20 nuclear mines deployed on chemical thrusters. The aliens in the battle area detected the primitive rockets and were confused. After millions of years of energy-based warfare, the sight of simple, chemical propulsion seemed almost comical. The void creatures ignored the mines entirely, dismissing them as irrelevant to the battle. They continued their systematic destruction of the alien fleet. "Range to target?" Riley asked. 50,000 kilometers in closing," Brooks replied. "Detonate the mines." 20 small suns bloomed in space. The nuclear explosions created spheres of superheated plasma, electromagnetic pulses, and most importantly, quantum chaos. The organized energy fields that the void creatures used to phase through normal matter were suddenly disrupted. For the first time in 3 years of war, the shadow creatures screamed. The sound came through the ship's communication system as a howling wail that made the crew cover their ears. Several of the void creatures caught in the nuclear blasts became fully solid, their ability to phase through matter completely gone. "It worked!" shouted Brooks. "The quantum flux is collapsing their superposition." "Follow-up attack," Riley ordered. "All missile tubes, fire at will." The Defiance unleashed its full nuclear arsenal. 48 warheads streaked toward the enemy on trails of chemical fire. The void creatures, now understanding the threat, tried to destroy the incoming missiles with their energy attacks. But the human weapons were too simple, too primitive. The shadow creatures' sophisticated attacks were designed to disrupt complex systems. Against basic chemical rockets carrying atomic warheads, they were helpless. The nuclear explosions lit up space like a string of pearls. Each detonation created a sphere of quantum chaos that forced nearby void creatures into solid form. Once solid, they were vulnerable to conventional attack. "The alien fleet is reforming," Hayes announced. "They're targeting the creatures we've made solid." The surviving alien ships, seeing their enemy suddenly vulnerable, pressed their attack. Energy weapons that had been useless moments before now tore through the solidified void creatures. The tide of battle was turning. "We've got their attention," Brooks warned. "Large group of contacts heading directly for us." Riley watched as nearly 100 void creatures broke off from the main battle and flowed toward the Defiance. Their forms writhed with rage, shadows darker than the space around them. Range to target? 30,000 kilometers and closing fast. Johnson, do we have any mines left? Negative, Captain. We're down to close-range weapons only. Riley made a decision that would have horrified any military academy instructor. All ahead full, ramming speed. Captain? Hayes sounded uncertain. You heard me. Take us right into the middle of them. The Defiance accelerated toward the oncoming swarm of shadow creatures. The aliens watching from their damaged ships couldn't believe what they were seeing. The humans were charging directly at an enemy that had just destroyed half their fleet. 10,000 kilometers, Brooks reported. 5,000. 1,000. Now, Riley shouted. Johnson triggered the ship's self-destruct sequence, but not to destroy the Defiance. Instead, the nuclear reactors were set to overload in a controlled explosion that would create the largest quantum chaos field ever generated. The void creatures, sensing the trap too late, tried to phase out of normal space, but the quantum field was already forming, locking them into solid matter. The explosion when it came was unlike anything seen in the galaxy's history. The Defiance's reactors, enhanced with alien technology and human ingenuity, created a quantum shockwave that rippled through space-time itself. Every void creature within 1,000 kilometers was forced into solid form. More importantly, the quantum disruption severed their connection to whatever dimension they came from. The surviving alien ships, now facing an enemy they could actually hurt, pressed their advantage. Energy weapons that had been useless for 3 years suddenly became devastating. The void creatures cut off from their shadow realm began to die. But the battle was far from over. The main body of the void swarm was still intact, and now they understood the threat the humans represented. The remaining shadow creatures began to converge on the Defiance. Damage report, Riley called out as the ship shook from the quantum explosion. Hull integrity at 60%, Martinez reported. Main engines offline, we're running on backup power. Weapons, we've got 6 nuclear torpedoes left in the point defense systems, Johnson replied. Riley looked at the tactical display. Over 1,000 void creatures were closing in on their position. The alien fleet was scattered and trying to regroup. The odds were impossible. Captain, Hayes said quietly, we've done our part. Maybe it's time to... No, Riley interrupted. We're not done yet. We've proven these things can be hurt. Now we need to buy the aliens time to reorganize their attack. She activated the ship-wide communication system one more time. All hands, this is the captain. We've just accomplished something nobody thought possible. We've hurt the enemy. But the fight isn't over. We're going to hold this position. We're going to keep fighting. And we're going to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity and everything we protect. The crew of the Defiance, battered but unbroken, prepared for what might be their final battle. Around them, the shadows closed in. But for the first time in 3 years, those shadows had reason to fear. The most dangerous ship in the galaxy was about to prove that sometimes the greatest weapon isn't technology or firepower, but the simple human refusal to surrender. The void swarm descended on the crippled Defiance like a storm of living shadow. Over 1,000 creatures flowed through space toward the small human ship, their forms rippling with rage and hunger. Captain Riley stood on the bridge, watching death approach. The ship's hull groaned under the stress of the quantum explosion they had triggered. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. The lights flickered as backup power systems struggled to keep them alive. Contact in 30 seconds, Lieutenant Brooks announced, his voice steady despite the hopeless situation. All remaining weapons locked on target, added Chief Johnson. 6 nuclear torpedoes ready to fire. Riley looked around at her bridge crew. These people had followed her into the impossible and never once questioned her orders. Now they faced annihilation with the same calm professionalism they had shown throughout their careers. It's been an honor serving with you all, she said simply. The honor was ours, Captain, Commander Hayes replied. The first wave of void creatures reached the Defiance. The ship's point defense systems opened fire, filling space with streams of depleted uranium rounds. The solid projectiles passed harmlessly through the phased creatures, but they served their purpose. They forced the shadows to solidify if they wanted to attack the ship. "Fire torpedoes," Riley ordered. 6 nuclear warheads streaked toward the enemy. The void creatures, now understanding the threat, tried desperately to destroy the incoming weapons. But human engineering was crude and robust. The simple chemical rockets were too primitive to be stopped by their energy attacks. The explosions created overlapping spheres of quantum chaos. Dozens of void creatures were forced into solid form and destroyed by the follow-up attacks from the regrouping alien fleet. But hundreds more kept coming. "That's it," Johnson reported. "We're out of nuclear weapons." The void creatures swarmed over the Defiance like insects. Tendrils of darkness reached through the ship's weakened shields, probing for a way inside. The hull began to buckle under their assault. Then something impossible happened. From the deepest part of space, beyond the edge of the solar system, came a presence that dwarfed everything else in the battle. The Void Swarm's command entity emerged from hyperspace, a creature so massive it defied comprehension. It was the size of a small moon, a writhing mass of shadow and malevolent intelligence. The alien fleet, what remained of it, began to retreat, in terror. Even from thousands of kilometers away, the command entity's presence was overwhelming. This was the mind that controlled the entire Void Swarm, the intelligence that had orchestrated the destruction of 47 star systems. "New contact bearing 007, Brooks reported, his voice shaking. "Mass readings are... Captain, that thing is bigger than most asteroids." The command entity's arrival changed everything. The smaller void creatures attacking the Defiance suddenly stopped their assault and began flowing toward their master. Within minutes, the entire swarm had reformed around the massive creature. "They're regrouping," Hayes observed. "Why would they?" His question was answered when the command entity began to pulse with dark energy. Reality itself seemed to bend around the creature as it prepared to unleash an attack that would destroy every ship in the system simultaneously. "It's charging some kind of superweapon," Martinez reported from the engineering station. "Energy readings are off the charts." Captain Riley stared at the massive creature on the main screen. In all her years of combat, she had never faced anything like this. No human had. This was a being of pure destruction, older than human civilization, more powerful than anything in the galaxy. And that's when she smiled. "Captain?" Hayes asked, concerned by her expression. "Don't you see?" Riley said, her voice filled with sudden understanding. "It's too big." "What do you mean?" "That thing is the size of a moon. It has to maintain its position in normal space-time to coordinate the swarm. It can't phase out like the smaller creatures." Brooks caught on immediately. "It's vulnerable to conventional attack." "More than that," Riley continued. "It's so massive that even a small disruption to its quantum matrix could cause a cascade failure." She turned to the ship's communication officer. "Get me Admiral Kesh, emergency channel." The alien admiral's face appeared on the screen, showing the strain of the ongoing battle. "Captain Riley, you must retreat immediately. That entity is beyond anything we can fight." "Admiral, I need you to listen very carefully," Riley said. "That creature is maintaining the psychic link that controls the entire swarm. If we can disrupt it, the smaller creatures will lose coordination." Kesh finished, understanding immediately. "But how? Our most powerful weapons barely scratched the smaller ones." "We're going to ram it." Silence filled the communication channel. Even the background noise of the alien ship's bridge seemed to stop. "That's suicide," Kesh said finally. "Maybe," Riley admitted. "But it's also the only chance we have. I need your fleet to create a distraction. Draw the smaller creatures away from the command entity. Captain, your ship is already damaged. You'll never survive a collision with something that massive." Riley looked around at her crew. She saw fear in their eyes, but also determination. They understood what she was asking of them. "Admiral, 3 years ago that thing began destroying your civilization. Today we stop it. Will you help us?" After a moment that felt like eternity, Admiral Kesh nodded. "All ships, attack formation. Draw the swarm away from the command entity. Give the humans a clear approach. The remaining alien fleet, badly outnumbered and outgunned, launched a desperate assault on the Void Swarm. Their energy weapons lit up space as they engaged the smaller creatures, pulling them away from their master. "Martinez, what's our engine status?" Riley asked. "Main engines are offline, but I can jury-rig the maneuvering thrusters for one final burn. We'll have maybe 60 seconds of thrust. That'll have to be enough. Johnson, prepare all remaining explosives for manual detonation. Captain, we don't have any nuclear weapons left. Then we'll use what we have. The ship's reactor, the emergency charges, everything. Turn the entire Defiance into one giant bomb." As the crew prepared for their final mission, Dr. Kim approached the captain. "Riley, there's something you should know. I've been studying the quantum readings from our previous attacks." "What is it?" "The command entity isn't just controlling the swarm, it's also maintaining the dimensional gateway that allows them to exist in our reality. If we can destabilize its quantum matrix, we could send the entire swarm back to whatever dimension they came from," Riley finished. "It's possible, but the explosion would have to occur at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right place." Riley nodded grimly. "Then we better not miss." The Defiance began its final approach. The battered destroyer limped through space on failing engines, heading directly toward the massive command entity. The creature, focused on charging its superweapon, didn't notice the small ship until it was too late. 10 kilometers in closing, Brooks reported. 5 kilometers. 1 kilometer. The command entity finally detected the approaching threat and turned its attention toward the Defiance. Tendrils of darkness reached out to crush the small ship, but Riley had timed their approach perfectly. The alien fleet's distraction had worked. Most of the smaller creatures were engaged elsewhere. "Now!" Riley shouted. Martinez triggered the reactor overload. Johnson detonated every explosive charge on the ship. The Defiance, enhanced with alien technology and human determination, became a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The explosion tore a hole in space-time itself. The command entity, caught in the quantum cascade, let out a scream that echoed across dimensions. Its massive form began to collapse as the dimensional gateway destabilized. One by one, the smaller void creatures throughout the system began to fade away, pulled back to their shadow dimension as the psychic link that sustained them was severed. Within moments, the entire swarm had vanished. The war was over. In the aftermath, as rescue ships searched for survivors from the Defiance, High Counselor Valdra stood in the council chambers, staring at a holographic display showing the empty space where the Void Swarm had been. 200 humans, he said quietly to Elder Vex. 200 beings from a primitive world saved our entire civilization. "Perhaps," Elder Vex replied, "we need to reconsider what we mean by primitive." 3 days later, the few survivors from the Defiance were recovered from an escape pod. Captain Riley, badly injured but alive, was brought before the Council of Worlds. "How?" asked Valdris. "How did you know your plan would work?" Riley, bandaged and exhausted, managed a small smile. "We didn't, but that's never stopped humans before. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is be willing to try something that no rational being would attempt." The galaxy was safe. The Void Swarm was gone. And somewhere in the records of the Council of Worlds, a new entry was made. The most dangerous ship in the galaxy is not the one with the biggest guns or the strongest armor. It is the one crewed by beings who refuse to accept that anything is impossible. Humanity had saved the galaxy not through superior technology, but through the simple willingness to do what needed to be done, no matter the cost.